My name is Lisa Shaw and I'm the Independent Chair of ACE, the Aparima Community Environment. We are made up of 6 catchment groups along the Aparima River, so Potukino, Urapuki, Waimatuku and the 3 Upper, Lower and Mid Aparima. ACE was launched in December 2018 and its original aims were to promote good farming practice and improve water quality and other environmental outcomes for the community. In 2021, ACE kicked off a 3-year project funded by Thriving Southland, and the expected outputs of that are to have a highly engaged and motivated ACE community. So we're looking to create an extensive network of farmer pods with farmers learning from each other. We're looking at installation of sediment traps and how that benefits our waterways. We're looking at future farming systems which are developed alongside qualified professionals. The key thing for ACE is about connecting communities, connecting people with knowledge and skills, and helping farmers realise their aspirations as they plan for and operate their properties. Today's been an example of one of those events that brings together a range of Environment Southland, farmers, rural professionals, and that's what we want to do. We want to create connection. We want to enhance people's understanding and knowledge so that even without detail about what these new requirements are going to look like, we're all part of the conversation and we're all playing our part.
Okay, welcome to our Avondale farm and the Drummond property. I think I'm the 4th generation to actually be involved with this property of the Drummonds. We run a bit over 8,000, about 8,500 stock units in this property, predominantly sheep, about 75% sheep, 25% cattle, with about 150 odd breeding cows and about 5,200 breeding ewes and replacements. Fatten all the lambs, fatten quite a few of the heifers here, but the bulls go to another property. It ranges from flat through to rolling and quite steep over some of it, with probably about 1/3 of the property still in tussock country. It's been oversown and fertilised and seed over the years, so it's reasonably good producing tussock country. We have a major waterway coming down through the middle of the farm which sort of divides it. We often call it top side and the bottom side of the creek, so that's very beneficial to the property, and also makes a great access direction too, because it naturally flows from the valleys and down towards the house and yards is where we are now. As far as environmental stuff, we've just been trying to head down the track of doing little projects along the way as part of an environmental plan. We're not perfect and we don't have everything mapped out to great detail, but we have done an environment plan, but it's one of those living documents that you need to get updated, and we're guilty like everybody else at this time of year and been busy for the last few months and need to get it updated this autumn again. But I think probably that some of the changes that we have made, as you'll see today, are some of the silt traps were just put in recently when the digger was here, and that was after conversations with David Moat from Environment Southland, but also been part of the ACE group. Actually helped launch the ACE group originally, so that gave me a bit of background as to the sort of things that were making a difference. The other things we've tried to do is our winter crop, like many others, is the way we break feed it off, but also in leaving some of the natural water courses uncultivated where we can. And also we've gone to spraying and praying some of the steeper country and getting reasonable results from this. We've still got a little bit to learn, but it means that we get less, got a bit of grass still there in the bottom to help hold it when we're breaking and feeding it off in the winter, so that's a way of still utilising some of the steeper country but not having the same environmental impacts. So it's, yeah, and I'm really looking forward to learning from everybody else today, as much as we're not perfect, but we certainly are trying to make some improvements, which that's what all we can do as a community, I think, is head down the right direction and try and understand the costs and opportunities, so we use the best approaches for different farms, and that's what this team around Environment Southland and all the ACE team and that here to help us with, is give us those bit more knowledge and bit of support as to where we head.
Well, hey guys, well, welcome to the Sediment Trap and Constructed Wetlands Day. No, you're not seeing something weird going on. Fonterra leading this discussion. Unfortunately, Beef and Lamb couldn't be here today. It's a funny world we live in right now, and it's all about collaboration, where we leverage off each other and we all pull things together and just make things, work together. But today's been put together by Thriving Southland It's an ACE group. ACE is Aparima Community Environment Group. It's a catchment group that's been started up for the Aparima community and mainly from farmers. ES has been a huge contributor of this, and Keith is one of our key speakers today. We've also got Beef and Lamb and Dairy NZ have contributed as well through their technical information, and also from Fonterra. Andrew Hunt is my name. I'm a sustainable dairy advisor for Fonterra, and so I advise dairy farmers on good farming practices and also help put together farm environment plans as well. So we've got a great day lined up today. Welcome to Turamonga Farm, is that right?
Where's Elisa? She'll get the pronunciation better than me. I call it Turamonga, but
Turamonga.
the Southern version.
I was trying to roll my R's. I'll just pass you on to Rachel. Rachel is our Thriving Southland person and also head sort of coordinator for the team for Thriving Southland and also for ACE. And also Bridget is our ACE person but is paid for by Thriving Southland as well. So over to you, Rach.
Yes, I am very lucky that I get to work with the Aparima catchment groups. So we are up here in the Upper Aparima, and it's cool to see this group getting a field day as a part of ACE. So ACE is made up of the 6 Aparima groups: Oropuki, Waimatuku, Porakino, Lower, Mid and Upper. They all are doing slightly different things with slightly different sort of agendas and projects, but they've come together on one big project, which is ACE and their 3-year community project. So I'm sorry if you all know that, so there's a few familiar faces that would have heard me talk about this a few times, but for those of you who don't know, we are halfway through a $500,000 project within the Aparima. It has 4 work streams. All of those work streams are geared towards engaging the Aparima community and increasing that community inspiration, engagement, innovation and all things. So today we are here a part of work stream farm plans effectively. So it's kind of got a few different names, but what we're trying to do is break down this big farm plan into sort of modular based stuff, give you guys some information, some tools, some resources to actually bring that farm plan of yours at home to life. And or if you haven't quite started one yet, hopefully give you a little bit more sort of inspiration and motivation to get started. Because it is a big beast, there's a lot of different things in it, but if you kind of break it down section by section, it can get quite interesting and there's lots of little things you can learn. So a couple of months ago, so before Christmas, we did a nutrient field day down near Riverton, and that was all about understanding, what sort of wins and opportunities you can have with nutrients on your farm. Today we're talking about sediment traps, so a bit about prevention, treatment options, and Keith will go into that a bit further. So we have many more of these in the pipeline, but would love today if you could have a think about something that you would really like to be broken down out of your farm plan. So the next module that we could look at opening up and bringing in some experts to talk about. The other work streams are water testing and stream walks. So Upper Aparima is yet to have their stream walk for 2022, so you guys will see that come out in the near future, hopefully. We've introduced 21 new water testing sites in the Aparima catchment. So this is just explaining the journey of water testing in conjunction with stream walks and how that all ties together. So we're getting real scientific data, and then we're going out into our actual waterways and looking at all of the little things that make up good stream health. We're also doing future farming, so we're looking at Overseer, FarmX, we're modelling options so that when the proposed limits all come into action, you guys have actually got tools and information relevant to your farming system in your area, in your catchment, that you can go to for ideas. So this is just finished the baseline, so it took us a while. There's 5 farms, 3 sheep and beef and 2 dairy, and yeah, we're looking at mitigations now, so you'll see that information come out. Sediment field day, sediment trap one. So we've also got a work streams dedicated to sediment traps. Big ones, little ones, medium ones, how much sediment they capture, what sort of nutrients they're capturing, what sort of tonnage they're capturing, how do you sort of build one to start with. So we've kind of combined that a little bit together. So yeah, that is pretty much ACE and the community project in a little bit of a nutshell, it's a big thing, but it's cool. It's run by farmers from all over the Aparima, and we're having a lot of fun. And I guess if you want to be a part of ACE or any of the catchments, we'd love to have you, and it's your platform to get your ideas across the line.
Firstly, I'd like to, I'll introduce you to the two speakers. Firstly, Keith Finlayson. He's a water science and sustainable land sus team at Environment Southland. Keith has been with ES for 3 years. He grew up in the Wairarapa on a dairy farm, and then went to university at Otago to study environmental management and economics. And then he told me that he's worked in a number of jobs, but then quickly texted me last night and said, oh yeah, and actually I've driven tractors over in Australia. So that was his big claim to fame. So he's studied under David Moat for the last 3 years, and he is the new guy which actually knows a lot about sediment traps and constructed wetlands. And we'll hear more and be able to pick his brains up at site 1, where we'll start off our day. But today's an interactive day, so please get alongside him and really get as much information from him as you want.
Okay, well, these dams were put in September when we had the digger here. Unfortunately, at that stage, with COVID, that the Environment Southland wasn't able to come up, and while David had designed them, he wasn't able to be here when we built them. So it was a little bit of a look at the map and between me and the digger driver, and away we went. So we haven't got them quite perfect. There's a few things I've learnt since from Keith when he was here the other day, but hopefully you'll learn from that too. But the idea of this stream was that there's quite a big catchment that goes right up into the tussock country, in fact right up to those trees there. And it's just a slow flowing creek. It virtually almost goes dry in the summer, this one. So we just had no other dams, especially this far down. There is one away further up, but there's nothing down this end, and we just thought while we're in the area and this was a cropping paddock that we would put a dam in here. The other consequences you might notice is that the raft nose hopeless around here. We shifted the ducks from our duck pond, which is just into the left of the bridge down there, up to here, and they ate the raffno, which they loved. So if you want to get ducks, plant raffno. So a couple of things about the dam that Andy just pointed out to me was the fact that when I was quite young, one of the first things I did at home was build a dam in another gully over there with the dozer one day, but it wasn't until Dad came home and he said, oh, you pushed the dirt out underneath first, did you? Because he could see a bit of seepage through the dam, and I just pushed it on top of grass, and it was very lucky to stay there. It is still there to this day, but it was very lucky it didn't go whoosh. So it was make sure you get it cleaned out in the bottom and then packing it down nice and firm if you're building them yourselves. And we propped some rocks. He just put rocks down that exit there to try and stop any scaring if we get a big rain event and it comes down and overflows a bit higher. So that was basically the design of it, but Keith will cover off a bit more around that than me.
As you can see, that Russell's doing some winter grazing here. That's when you're going to graze it off?
Yeah, well, I was in Swedes last year, this one, and we strip-tilled it into Swedes, which we've been playing around with too, so we're not disturbing the soil so much, but we did hit one rock down here, one rather good sized rock down here, and did a little bit of damage to the strip till. So this place has probably only got some of the ground, but our other two farms are more suited to it. So that's certainly one of the things that we're doing too, yeah. And then this year we just dissed it and put it in like you would a kale crop, so spun it on.
Buffers along the winter grazing. But more importantly, the reason, from what I understand, is that you've got your sediment trap here because of the winter grazing catchment up above. Is that right? Yeah,
and just over time we do quite a bit of cropping in around this area because it's some easier country through here, so and pretty reliable. So we do have crops in here. We haven't got heaps in here this year. Most of the catchment of that one each year will go the other way, but.
And so, did you see sediment runoff because of the slope up further? Or?
Not specifically. At times you can. Obviously, you get a big rain in the winter. There's probably a classic one across here. David Moat had a look at that. That was young grass last year, and you can probably still see down the edges where we had the electric fence line where all the thistles are. That's about where the line we had. The gullies fenced off in the winter, and he was quite happy considering it was a steep paddock what we'd done there to keep stock away from the gullies. And of course you had long grass like this, and we only grazed it very lightly once we took the at the end of the winter with might have been some rams I think we shoved in there just to chew it down a wee bit before we cultivate it and put it into grass. So because that is getting up near that sort of slope degree range. There's patches on it that are hitting that target, or just hitting that target. Not big areas, but little areas of it. So
We're looking at a couple of different types of ways of controlling and trapping sediment here and contaminants. Is that right?
Yep, that's right, and particularly from your farm plan. Yep, you'll identify that and break it down, and it's always prevention first. So you want to keep the sediment and contaminants in the paddock if you can, and that's why the way you graze it, the way you cultivate it, and the stock type, like heavier stock on flatter ground, lighter stock on steeper stuff, and big buffers at the bottom. And then you might not choose to winter graze some paddocks because you just know that you can't keep it on those paddocks, and then you come down, and this is what you do last when you've finished all your management options and you've put in fencing and done everything else that you can. But it's still good. You just have to put it in its place. So yeah, it's hard to get the order of things right, but sediment traps definitely have their place.
So what would you call, what type of sediment trap would you call this? Is this
I'd call that a sediment trap with a bund. You've got two options when you build a sediment trap. You can excavate or you can put a bund. Often you'd end up doing both, but you want to minimise the earthworks, and so it depends on the site. This sort of narrows in nicely just here. It's sort of similar most of the way up, but often in gullies there'll be an area that's narrow, and that's where you look to put the sediment trap. And in this case, this is a 87 hectare catchment, which is quite large for a sediment trap. I have complicated maths, which I can go into if you're curious, but because it's already got some sediment attenuation with the natural vegetation that's growing right down the bottom here, it should be okay. But yeah, for an 87 hectare catchment, you'd be looking at a much larger sediment trap to get reductions in the NIWA guide, but that takes into account there being no vegetation, and the only thing stopping sediment is the sediment trap. So that isn't the case here, so this is why we can come a bit smaller.
So hang on, let's just define that, because what Keith's saying here is that this is just a part of a sediment reduction further on up.
Yep.
So what would you class, that's a critical source area, is that right?
A vegetated critical source area.
Vegetated. Yep. So what benefit and what is it doing basically for capturing contaminants and sediment?
Yeah, you can imagine during rainfall, as water's flowing off the hill, it has to percolate through this vegetation, and those tussocks there and the rank grass, it tends to be a bit rougher right down the bottom there. That slows the water down more so than on a quite a grazed down paddock, and particularly because the water's concentrating in there, so there's a higher flow, and that's why the vegetation's really helping.
So if we fence that area off completely, the critical source area, which is what standard, what ES recommends or what good farming practices recommend, how would that impact on that area?
It would help the vegetation grow a bit denser, and it would keep the stock out, because the other option or consequence of having a bit more vegetation down the bottom is stock can come camping there. So if you both avoid the camping and the vegetation is thicker, then it helps really prevent sediment coming off the hill.
So to improve what the fantastic work that Russell's already done here, so an improvement piece could be actually to potentially to fence off part of or the vegetative area.
Yep, and particularly you'll be able to follow it. Now that there's the sediment trap here, the speed that it fills up will give you an indication of how much you're losing. And so if it fills up really fast, then you might look at either building more or fencing off the gully. If it's not filling up very fast, then you might have an indication that your management and your prevention further up on the paddock is working quite well.
So Russell, what sort of maintenance do you do here? I mean, do you get the bulldozer in here and try and
not the
butcher it
bulldozer.
again?
No, well we've had summer, and there's a pond over there. My father built a duck pond when I was a kid, and we had a digger in there now, and it's probably 4 or 5 times the size area of that, probably 5 or 6 actually, and it was virtually silted right up. It had filled right up with silt, so there was a lot of silt in there, and the only trouble with that was it wasn't designed to be cleaned out, so the digger could only go across the dam and clean so much out, and then it sort of flows into it, and next time he's in the area we'll do that again. So probably our plan going forward is we'll just clean these out when we've got a digger in the area, when I think they're getting near that stage of needing it, if we're doing some other work around, because the cost of going around the whole farm and doing them, it's the time to get to all the different locations is the cost, not the actual time to clean them out. So that's the way we plan to do it. There's one interesting one at Five Rivers we did not long after we got up there, and it was in Tussock Country, and you would have thought there wouldn't be a lot of runoff in Tussock Country, but there was a lot of tonnes of silt come out of that one built by the previous owner, which was I was quite surprised how much silt was in it actually for a native country, but I suppose it's not high quality tussock country, so it's still reasonably openish in the base, I suppose, compared to something that's a bit heavier stocked, if you know what I mean. So there's pluses and minuses of stocking rate and not stocking rates, I suppose, in their grass cover.
And I think you've hit on a really good point. I'd like to reference the Pomahaka, the work that Pomahaka has done, and in terms of they've actually measured through ag research some of the sediment reduction and the P and N loss. So it's what it's captured per sediment trap, and that's on your last page of your handout. Or it might be actually a separate bit, but really good stuff, really interesting work being completed by them to actually show that it is actually working, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was trying to remember, was it around a 30% reduction in some of the areas that they were getting because of it?
Yeah.
So
30 to 50 I think in some
that
areas.
was quite significant.
Yeah.
And if you are aiming for a particular percentage reduction, you do want to stay as close to the NIWA guides as possible for size, because you think during the higher flows that's when it becomes harder to capture sediment once it's entrained, because you have to slow the water down and it has to sit in there, circle around a bit and stay kind of still, and then it settles out and then the water carries on. So you think once it's entrained in water, it is kind of hard to get it out unless you've got the right size sediment trap.
I think Keith passed a comment when we were here the other day that we should have had our dam a little bit straighter so it didn't actually flow quite so, it's actually did a bit more of a circle than flow straight through. That taper on the dam would have been better if we'd gone a little bit more like that with it.
Yeah, to sort of square it up against the gully perpendicular, but still have the outlet off to the side would have been good. But can we have a show of hands? Does anyone have a farm plan? You've got one? Yep.
Yeah. So about half the farmers. Yeah, that's good. And is that a beef and lamb farm plan, or is it other beef and lamb? Yeah.
Because I would add that the farm plan is really helpful to take a good look at your farm and just think about where am I potentially losing contaminants, and your contaminants are nitrogen, phosphorus, E. coli and sediment, and often your batch sediment and phosphorus together, and kind of E. coli too, because they all stick together, and so you'll see water running off the hill kind of brown, and that's your phosphorus, sediment and E. coli coming off the hill, and then nitrogen is a bit more difficult. A sediment trap like this will target phosphorus and sediment mainly. It doesn't so much address nitrogen, but growing vegetation above and below will do that to some extent, and nitrogen you want to focus on inputs, so where you're grazing and how much fertiliser you're putting on, and making sure you put that on in appropriate conditions. So in terms of this, when David was driving around with Russell, he would have, in discussion of what was happening on the farm and the topography, the main risk here is the winter grazing in the slope. Even just having stock and slope with critical source areas is kind of all you need to know to build a sediment trap, and then depending on your water system and how much fencing you've got, whether or not you got your water crossings in, you start thinking about these sediment traps. So we've got the overland flow, the farm activities, the contaminant pathway, and then this is intercepting that, and yeah, depending on how it goes, you'll build more or less them. And as we can see, this bund is the key part, and then the outlet off to one side, and as Russell was saying, keyed in the middle so that the water doesn't percolate through it, and you scrape off all the topsoil before you build the bund. And yeah, digger drivers are more expert than me about the appropriate material and techniques for actually building that, but the key design is there.
Boys? Oh, sorry.
I was just curious, probably haven't seen many of these, but like, how important is the depth? Like, are they wide and shallow, or like, do they go to a deep point in the middle, or like, just talk a bit about that?
Yep, so the actual shape. So usually, if you can fit it with the topography, it's longer than it is wide, and it's around 1.5 metres deep at its deepest point. And you want to batter the slopes in, you don't want any steep sides, so you want it to go gently down, and the deepest part will be somewhere in the middle. And it also depends, you're quite restricted on width because a digger can only reach 8 metres give or take with an extended boom. I think. So it's almost always longer than it is wide, and then if you're aiming for, like the guidelines would say you need 40 metres squared per hectare, so for every 40 square metres, 10,000 square metres in a hectare, so it's a smallish bit, but with that sort of gives you an indication of how much square metre area you need, and then the size goes long and wide. Yep.
So for 87 hectare catchment, how big should that have been then?
Without that vegetation in the gully and everything being smoothed off, cultivated, like if all that was farmed 100%, this would need to be 3,200 square metres, which would be like, I wrote it in my notes somewhere, but
Yeah, that's right.
for 87 hectares, yeah. So you'd break it into 3 or 4 or 5 coming down the valley, and because this is also a slightly flatter spot, I'm not sure if it's that obvious, maybe not, but you know, as soon as you build a bund, if it's quite a steep slope, you'll only go back so far before you hit the hill. So you're quite restricted in how much area you can actually get, and you can only build them on these sloped areas because as soon as you get down the flat, you become too much of a waterway and you start getting into resource consent territory. So there are limitations that stop you reaching those size goals, but it's just good to keep in mind if you're aiming for a particular reduction. But yeah, bigger is better, but it really just comes down to the site.
So, like,
Don't be put off by size.
You touched on, Keith, that I was a little bit worried the day you come up here that maybe we'd gone to a creek that we should have had a consent on, but this is probably all right. But if we went on to one of our creeks a bit further over here that's a bit bigger, that's definitely a flowing creek and a little bit bigger, then we would need consent to do anything like this on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just be careful where you're putting them.
You said this is dry.
It does dry off in the summer, yeah.
Is anyone taking
Okay.
into consideration weeds and pests in fenced waterways, like driving around, especially down the Aparima, and probably more specifically the dairy farms? The weed and pest issue is going to be huge. It's the gorse and broom.
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion. No solution is perfect. You simply do something to address an issue and whether or not you create another one. Managing riparian areas, if you fence them, ideally you'd plant them at least one side because you usually have to get in to excavate, and that halves the problem as soon as you get good vegetation cover on one side to suppress the weeds. In terms of like up the middle of the Aparima, that's an ongoing discussion in Environment South and like to how to deal with weeds and not pump so much spray on the river, so that's ongoing. No solutions as yet, but it is a problem.
E. coli, as Russell pointed out, that attracted ducks. Has any research been done on elevated levels of E. coli, avian, I guess, below sediment traps?
I'm not aware of the research, but it certainly attracts ducks, and there's some things like planting all the way around the edges with carrot sector and shading them. Sometimes planting trees where you don't need access to the digger can help push them out a bit. They don't like shaded in, crowded areas. Yeah, so if you can cut that out, then it decreases them, but it is an aspect you need to consider. Under future improvements, you know, you got fencing, you got potentially building more, you got planting, and then reducing a duck problem if you have one would be part of that improvement over time. But yes, elevated E. coli from ducks is a thing. How much it addresses a problem from a health point of view in rivers is debated because they don't have similar DNA to humans, so it gets complicated.
So that's probably one thing I didn't understand a little while ago, that there's E. coli from sheep is actually quite a lot worse than the E. coli from a lot of the birds, because I just looked at the total E. coli, but it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very expensive to get a rough proportionised E. coli test done, like to figure out how much is from bovine and how much is from avian species. So
We've got about 5 minutes before we can we head back down to site 2 to park up. Any more questions here?
So we've kind of built one of these at home already. I wonder if the bund was in a curve and the outlet was on the apex of the curve, not in the middle of the curve. Would that be an improvement, you reckon?
well, the way it's written in the guidelines and what David Mola always told me is you keep them off to the side so that during high flows, if you start getting an erosive force, it doesn't take out the main bund. It just it'll scour out a bit of the edge, but it won't destroy the structure. Whereas if you have it right in the middle, yeah, it can go pear-shaped, and I would be interested to see, because it's such a big catchment, how this is going to go with high flows. So that's something you won't really know until it happens. But yeah, the rocked outer edge bit, and there's also like a tiny mini sediment trap just in front of the rock there. And this will hopefully revegetate with grass by the winter.
Sorry, so I suppose on that, as far as it goes, Russell, like the main cost is obviously the cost of the digger work, is it?
Yeah.
As far as construction.
Yeah.
There is in your handout, there's a table of, we put the number of hours because digger prices obviously can vary from area to area, and you might have your own digger, so it doesn't cost as much. But so we thought hours was probably a better indication and a better guideline to actually put down. Just to give you, but what? How many hours did you say?
It was just a 13-tonne digger too, so if you're 20-tonne digger, you're probably not going to err off that. But he was about 3.5 hours here from memory.
Yeah.
Probably one thing I'd seen here, and it was before we actually did the water table, but it always used to come off the track and flow down and through here. And there was, where that bit of gravel was, there was just an open area, and the tile come down this gully, which was only tiles for a little bit, and was drain flow, that's why it's now worked right through the gully. It wasn't last year in Swedes, but we had to dig the gully up, so we might as well level it out. And it'd be good thing of putting some grass seed on there shortly, as we won't have any issues in the winter. But that used to be open just in that area there, just from the fence through, so the tiles come out above, and then the water would come down here off the track, go in there, unless you've got a great big flood. If we've got a great big flood, it would go straight across the top of the track, and some of it from the gully would too, and down across the paddock. But we were putting this stuff off here straight through there, coming out of tile just at that bank, just where it drops over that bank there, and really it was pretty steep down into the creek, so all the runoff from the track was going virtually straight into there. So I had to yarn to David about what we could do about that. We've got the same issue on some other tracks, but generally they're nowhere near a creek and they've got plenty of time to filter out before we get there. So this was one of the ones that we'd identified as being an issue. So originally we tried to look at putting the silt trap in here, but actually it was a digger's idea to say, well, it'd be a lot better on the other side, which made sense, and just hoik it through the fence. So that was a good plan for that. So that probably covers off. We get a bit of rain down here, so what Keith said when he was here was go a bit wider with our fence around it, because we'll get a bit of long grass there to catch any flow that comes down through here and catch a bit more of the overland flow when we get a big rain, because there's sort of 4-inch drain flow up these gullies here above us. The paddock above the gully we actually haven't cultivated will come down each side of it. It's a little bit hard to quite see into it from here because it meanders up through there, but there's probably a 3-4 metre strip up the gully that's not cultivated there.
That's your buffering.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get some gravel back on this track, but hopefully it'll grow grass again eventually. But we had no real good water table on it. It was only one that used to keep blocking up and flowing out onto the track because there was no real shape in it. So we shifted that out into the paddock and spread it out, and then done this. But the consequence of cleaning out a wood table is that you get the clay going down the creek. And when the forestry went in behind us here, there's about 5,000 acres of forestry in behind us, and a fair chunk of that, over half of it, would come this way down through this creek in the catchment. And probably 3-4 years after they put the roads in there, the creek would go yellow every time we got a significant rain. So there's a lot of silt comes off those tracks, if you know what I mean. Now, I think our winter cropping's a big issue, but me personally, I think our roading, not only farm tracks, but public roads, are the next biggest issue that we probably have, to be honest, as far as silt goes.
Keith, you've got something to add to that?
As everyone had a look, like you can actually see where some of the sediment's being captured. That's a good indication of how it's working. In terms of choosing a spot, there's certain areas you can choose on farm where you get your biggest bang for your buck, and here it was a concentrated effect, so it's quite a small catchment. It's 1/4 of a hectare. David might worked out about 2,500 square metres. And so, but based off those guides, 40 square metres per hectare. Yep. So 1/4 of a hectare, this needs to be at least 10 square metres, and it's 20, so he's doubled the minimum size in this case. Oh yeah. So that'll mean it'll capture the coarse sediment, and it'll also capture some of the finer stuff, which we can see if you have a close look. And you can see how it's been channeled in, and it's longer than it is wide. So this is a pretty good example of your more theory-based sediment trap. How deep did you go, Russell? It was about a metre and a bit?
Yeah, so I'd be lucky to be a metre below there now. Probably 3/4 of a metre, I'd say, down below there, probably where it is. About just over a metre, I'd say.
Yeah, and so you don't want to go too deep when it's quite narrow, because you still want to be able to slope those sides so that you don't get so much caving in. And then your outlet is that 6-inch Nova Flows?
Yeah, 6 inch, and it goes into 6 inch that comes down the gully here. Well, it's 4 inch just up here, but we did a shortcut of 6 inch to take this in with it to join it in.
Yeah, and did Dave Moat tell you to use that size, or you figured it out? Yeah. Yeah, so that's perfect, and it'll only take the water once it's filled up a bit. And I did some calculations, but again, how much we want to go into maths, I'm not sure. But I figure it holds 20,000 litres, and if there was no evaporation or infiltration, there'd be about 2.2 million litres come off this area over the course of a year, given 900 mils of rainfall and a 1/4 hectare catchment. There will be infiltration, there will be evaporation and various other things, but it just gives you an indication. There's quite a lot of water stored there, and then there's quite a lot of water that comes off throughout the year in various intensities.
Probably the only other comment would be that Keith might think we've got the fence slightly close where the tool to digger drive, and we can't get too much further away and then reach and clean it and drop it that way, which is, you could bring it out this way and drop it onto a truck, but that becomes painful too, you know what I mean? So that was why the fence is there. Ideally you'd probably be another metre away, but he hasn't got a long boom air guy, so yeah.
Yep. And you can see during the course of the discussions, just to recap what Russell was saying, the contaminant is sediment and a little bit of E. coli probably and a little bit of phosphorus, just because it's always attached. It's overland flow, and this will slow the overland flow and treat it before it gets to the creek. Yeah, so it's visual evidence.
Yeah, and probably the other thing now, if we get a big rain event, at least if we've got some grass out there, it's going across the overflow and got some filtering effect before it gets to the creek.
So, because as Keith and Russell have identified, tracks are one of the key areas of contaminant loss. So that's the risk. And then the second thing that we're actually identified on dairy farms is also gates going onto tracks as well, and particularly if they're around culvert areas. So that's a really good farming practice further on down the track, is perhaps bring it back 10 metres, cut off that area on a triangular, and you'd plant that up in some sort of grass or something like that. But it's just identifying that risk of contaminant loss through that high stock use area, and quite often they might be dug out a bit. They might have a bit of rainwater ponding or something like that, and that gets into the waterway. So it's actually removing that risk of that sediment and contaminant getting into the waterway. So it's things like that if we start thinking of it in a way of how can we can see the risk, what's a cheap, easy way of and it's not going to affect our stock, our stock management as well. I think that's the key to it, because we don't want to put in these things, and then it means that when you drive a mob of ewes up or something like that, and it just doesn't work. That whole movement. So yeah.
I think another key aspect of this is you don't have a lot of options in terms of prevention or management. Like, you can't just maintain vegetation cover to keep that there. You can add a bit of gravel. I think you were saying you might do that.
The track, hopefully they're sort of on that track.
So in this case, treatment is kind of your only option for this particular case. Whereas across the farm, you're putting in your water system, you're doing your fencing, you're using crossings instead of fords. You sometimes have some other things to work through before you go to a sediment trap, but here it really is a good spot for it, and it is doing a really good job.
So improvements on this design, guys?
Fencing is a key one, and then
well done, Russell.
Yeah, you're on your way.
I was going to be this morning, but the bank's coming this afternoon. I thought I'd better sort a couple of things.
Oh, yeah.
Tell him a good story first.
Apparently he's got on the pies.
I see a couple of other bankers here.
And then planting, particularly around the edge, you'll have to be a bit careful to not get in the way of the digger, but carrot sector around the edge, especially as you get bigger, you get a bit of water wave sort of action, and that can erode the edges if you don't protect it. So planting around the edge with carrot sector is a really good idea. And then, yeah, maybe shading, but I don't think you'll have any problems with ducks-ish. There might be one or two. I'd make one final comment. This is, everyone knows, critical source area. You got the areas coming down. We talked a bit about it over there, but that's the other thing potentially, Russell, is just, you were saying before you didn't cultivate it last time.
Yeah, we can weeds we did, but we ended up, because we'd done a ditch up and it was all rough, so we wanted to level it out, so we did cultivate it.
Yep. And in terms of a sediment trap, like another one could be at the base of one of those hills in the future, and it would be similar to the one we saw at the start. But yeah, your management in terms of not cultivating it when that's possible and keeping stock out and grazing towards it and leaving it last and then coming from the top of it all the way down is another good option for winter grazing. But, you know, it comes past and yeah, it would be similar to this but just a bit bigger, and again it would be a bund with outlet off to one side. Yep.
Right, any further questions?
How do you sort of identify when you need to clean them out, like when the silt's starting to come over the top, or ideally before that?
Yeah, you'd want to
Like the smaller one might be a bit more often than say a bigger one, but
it's flexible and it'll essentially just come to when the digger's coming past. But yeah, you still want a bit of volume in there. It works when there's enough that water comes in and it sits there for a bit. If it's full of sediment and there's only say 20 or 30 centimetres, it's not going to be working very well. The water will just flow straight to the overflow and carry on. So yeah, you'd probably let it fill up maybe half, and then you'd want to excavate it. But if the digger was coming past, you'd just do it before then.
We were talking in
No hard and fast rule.
about the nutrient value in that sediment. Ideally, if possible, in terms of the phosphorus and potassium in there, you probably spread it back on the paddocks if you were able to do that.
Yeah, you could. Yep. Yeah, if you had a muck spreader, you'd put it back on. We did do some water quality testing, some sediment testing, and it showed the levels of nutrients in the sediment are above what would be considered a natural level if there was no farming or human interaction. But it wasn't spectacularly high or atypical, and there's no real reference for deposited sediment, but the Jacobs or New River Estuary has a lot higher nutrient in its deposited sediment, which is what an ES scientist sent me for reference. So it was at the lower end, but yeah, definitely worth capturing and better than being in the waterway heading down to Jacobs. Yep.
Those results are in your handout as well if you're curious. So we took sediment sample out of all three of the ponds we're looking at today, and we tested them, but some of them are quite new. So yeah, the sediment test is as explained.
This one here was quite low, but you expect that there's clay mostly going in here, where the other two are soil. I mean, that one we've just been to, and the other, you'll see some more down by Calliards here shortly, they were soil too, so more than clay, so that's probably why the difference is, I suspect.
Yeah.
In terms of the sediment that you're removing, like realistically, we were talking in the car for sheep farmers, you're just going to pile it up somewhere, like what? Not many sheep and beef farmers would have a muck spreader or anything, so
yeah.
Like what's the best practice in terms of removing that sediment and where to?
Yeah, just somewhere safe where it won't be mobilised again. So you wouldn't want to put it in the middle of a paddock that you're going to winter graze later on, and you might want to fill in hollows. It just depends.
It was easy in this one, we had cropland here, like all the stuff off, it was just spread out across the paddock. They could just spread that across, so it's pretty easy while it's worked up. But sometimes you might have that opportunity, but you could probably make a pile out there, couldn't you, for a while, I mean, as long as it wasn't going to get affected somewhere, and then spread it out next time you're going through the paddock,
Yeah.
tractor or dozer or something, and you're cultivating it then. It's good. You're full of the goodies, so that should grow well. They're the crop around that area.
Yeah, just not next to it, just not in the flood zone essentially. You know.
Keith, sorry, one more for you. Circling back to the plants, when you are planting around sediment traps, and tile drains and things, just talking about the root structures and...
Yeah, you want to just be careful that the roots won't go down and block your tile drain. I've talked to a few farmers, they'll never ever plant anything ever again. They're against the plants. So yeah, just be careful. Carrot sector doesn't go very deep, and they reckon flax doesn't either, but pittosporums will go a bit deeper if you start planting trees. So yeah, it's a little bit, you got to look into it. But grasses and the less height tends to mean less root mass generally. So if you plant lower things, you'll be right, and you have an idea of how deep the tile is. But yeah, don't plant willows. Willows are probably the worst. They'll go far, and poplars apparently they go quite far as well. And yeah, planting is quite hard. I'd recommend a protector generally, and consider it going back and spraying around it at least 3 times over the summer for the following 2 years. And yeah, just keep an eye on it, because it's better to plant less plants and look after them really well, and I have a preference for buying bigger plants. You know, these are probably PB2s, give or take, so they'd be around $5 if you brought them from a nursery. If you get PB3s, they're more like $8 to $10, but then they're 2 years growth already. So yeah, you pay the money, but then you get a bigger plant and there's less maintenance, so depends on your budget and how much area you want to cover.
And the PB is the size of the
root mass, and it's like 600 mil is a PB.
Right.
PB1's 600 mil pint. Yep. So in terms of Dave Moat's calculations, he considered a lot of this area to be part of the treatment. So like this vegetated area that it flows through, and there's a bit more further up. So he actually did consider that 3.5% of the catchment was treated, and in your handout I missed a 0, so instead of 190,000 square metres I've got 19,000 for 19 hectares, but the rest is right. So the key risk here was stock access and grazing, and then a little bit of winter crop on the edges in places, but the main catchment, everything on that side goes down that river there, so it is everything on the right hand side. And yeah, originally there was going to be 4. I think Russell found that wasn't going to work, so there's this one, there's one more, and they were only 10 square metres each in surface area, so it was complementary to the existing vegetation that again was already attenuating some of the sediment coming down, as opposed to just these structures, because again once the high flows start coming down, it'll probably bypass part of this wee sediment trap. Yeah, and key improvements would be fencing it off to keep stock out, and planting, particularly around the edges. And yeah, in future you'd want to be better off with a bit more of a slope on either side. How deep were these ones, Russell?
To be honest, I'm not sure, because I wasn't here when he actually dug them. I left him to the job. But I'd say probably about 1 metre below where it is there now, I'd say.
Yep. Yep.
So you also mentioned there was a comment about the battering, and I think you mentioned about that as well.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And yeah, you'd want the outlet a bit more of a, again, just because of it's sort of working in with this anyway, like that'll be slow and flow, but you'd want it off to the side slightly, just to allow the water to do a bit more of an eddy, as opposed to flowing straight through. But yeah, it'll be a good one to watch, like come down when there is a bit more rain and see what's happening, and then from there you can assess its effectiveness and what you might change in future in a similar spot, or add in more sediment traps. You can see here, compared to up on the hill, there's a bit more issues around fall. You might still have to build a bit of a bund just to make sure it is held. But yeah, this is quite a flat area. And in terms of regulation and stuff, this is probably about as far as you'd want to go. This is starting to get more towards a waterway than a critical source area. You're starting to get a bit more aquatic growth in the waterway. It's still a soft bed, and you know, once you start getting the carrot sector and permanent wet plants growing, then you start to think it's getting a bit more towards what you'd consider a waterway.
So would that be sort of going on to a constructed wetland? Is that what you're sort of saying there?
Yeah. Because we've got the sediment trap at the top end, and you'll see in the handout there's a diagram. Sediment traps are just a bit more of a simpler structure. It's slowing the water down, the sediment drops out. Constructed wetland pretty much always has a sediment trap at the top end, and then it goes through shallow water with growing vegetation. And the growing vegetation's a bit tricky, and yeah, other than in natural settings, it's quite hard to get it right when you build it from the start, because you always get channels, and it's hard to get the vegetation established and constantly growing. It might grow for a couple of years and then it's all stable and the water passes through. So sediment traps are a bit more straightforward, but yeah, this has definitely got good vegetation. It'll be sucking out a bit of nutrients as well.
So from what I've seen on farm, and based on the Pomahaka group, is a constructed wetland is really good if you want to polish your water just after the end of a tile drain outlet. So taking back 10 metres, from your tile drain outlet, taking up that overflow of the tile drains, constructing a little wee sediment trap sump area, and then just fencing that area off, and then just allowing that water to go down, percolate down through grasses, and it's just a very sort of a slow, narrow, low gradient type scenario. So that's sort of where that type of tool would be the most effective, wouldn't it?
Yep, and it is, with sediment traps, it's a little bit more forgiving-ish about size relative to catchment, whereas with constructed wetlands, to pull nitrogen out of water, you have to stick to 1 to 5% of the catchment area to get at least 20%, I think it starts. I'm thinking of a curve, and 1% of the catchment will equal so much N reduction. And so here with 19 hectares, 1%, I'd have to do the math, I don't think I have it in my notes. Yeah, it's quite a lot essentially. It's 400 square metres per hectare for 1%.
I think back in the Pomahaka handout, there's actually a constructed wetland, constructed wetland tile drain just photos, so for you to have a look at, and which is another tool for sediment and reduction.
Yeah, I've got it for 19 hectare catchment. You'd need 1/5 of a hectare in constructed wetland to treat it, 1%. So it's quite large.
Any other questions before we wrap it up?
How did you decide, how did David decide this location?
Again, that was part of this track and the runoff going on the other side here and through the culvert pipe, and that. So it was done as much for the track as it was for the surrounding country when we originally thought about it. We'd obviously do both. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And stock access, I think, like that is.
The plan is to feed down this edge and around the bottom there, and just clean it from over where Keith is there. Perhaps a bit something along the bank here.
Despite its flaws, if that's the fair word, you can see it's clearly working, isn't it?
Yep, it'll be doing something. That's why it's good to reference the literature and have an understanding of key principles, but you are generally governed by the site as to how big you can go, how deep you can go, how wide, and where the outlet goes. You don't have a lot of foot choice.
You're absolutely right. Something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up, guys. Firstly, thank you, Keith. A lot of work's gone into this. We really appreciate the time and effort that you've put in, and Ella as well. The information that he's put together they've been working on for about a week, which has been drawn upon lots of different reference points and websites, Dairy NZ, Beef and Lamb, who else? Pomahaka, obviously. NIWA. Yeah, so that's sort of he's collated all that, and he's really tried to make it into a meaningful handout and something that is actually you can share with other people as well. I hope Russell, thank you very much for opening up your farm today and to allowing us on here and having a good look around. It was funny, Nathan and I were just talking about how it's such a unique experience to come and see a sheep and beef farm like this, and very, very different to the systems that we see. So thank you very much, and being so open about what you're doing as well, because it's not an easy process to allow people onto your farm and to have some sort of scrutiny. So keep up the good work, and we just wish you the best for what you're doing here. So yeah. Thriving Southland and ACE, thank you very much for hosting the day. Rachel and Bridget, you've done a huge amount of work as per. We really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much. Also, you guys, the catchment groups, thank you very much for coming today as well. These days are really for you. This is not us doing something because we want to do it and it ticks off stuff. Our KPIs. That's far from it, because I've got another job to do as well. But we are here legitimately because we firmly, passionately believe to help and enable you guys to do the best possible job you can. And we've got a wealth of resource and knowledge here to enable you guys to do that. And you just need to ask for help and get along to your catchment groups and get that funding from Thriving Southland to make farming in New Zealand a better, prosperous industry for tomorrow. So please make use of it. But thank you very much for turning up today. We really appreciate it.